I've chosen to set the play in the Harlem Renaissance because so much of the African American experience in this country has often been about families being separated, and that really begins in slavery. Families were sold apart from each other, couples were broken apart, families were destroyed by the system of slavery because it was all about the economics. And so often after Reconstruction and really through ever since, you would be walking somewhere, you could be in a city far away from where you're from or what you think your origins are, and you see someone across the way or you meet someone and you think, I recognize you. There's something, we're from the same tribe. I recognize myself in you. And I think that's a really common experience for so many of us. And there's a lot of stories about this happening, particularly from Reconstruction all the way up into the 30s and 40s, of people meeting people and finding out through conversations we're actually related. We're actually family members. And it's really that kind of reuniting, that kind of recognition, that kind of community sort of engagement and interaction is part of what has buoyed up our culture and sustained us and allowed us to thrive. And that's a really important, wonderful thing to be able to celebrate. And so I feel like because Comedy of Errors is about a separation of family that then is brought together, what better way to do it than to have the twins coming up from the South and they arrive in Harlem, New York, which is a port city, just what Shakespeare describes, and they're reunited there. In many ways, Harlem becomes Mecca for African Americans, in particular between the two wars, World War I and World War II. Harlem becomes a cultural center, a place where the American dream really seems possible for African Americans. You see African Americans achieving extraordinary things culturally in terms of literature, but there's also, you see daily, a thriving working class, a thriving middle class, where people are achieving and renting and owning and really beginning to achieve what feels like the American dream. The American dream seems more possible than ever for so many people. When Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and Duke Ellington and so many people are achieving at such a level, and you've been sharing the streets with them, they've been your neighbors, they're in your community, you can't help but feel that that's possible for you too. Many of the designers on this production of Comedy of Errors are designers that I've worked with before. The costume designer, Cara Harmon, and the media, video, and projection designer, Sean Dwan, are both designers that I have a long collaborative history with. And we're excited by many of the same things. This is a period in our history that was rich with visual expression, and African Americans have often chosen fashion, style, anything as a means of self-expression, anything to sort of celebrate the self, celebrate what it is to be alive, having made it through. So you might not have 5 or 6 or 8 fantastic outfits, but whatever it is you do have is always going to look great, is always going to say something about how you feel in that particular day. So, you know, the choices of colors, the choice of styles of hair, how one moves in those kinds of things, gives you a chance to really express who you are. And a whole community of people doing that leads to energy, leads to excitement, leads to a lot of color. I think it's going to be a really exciting production visually because it's a whole community of people expressing their personal sense of style literally every time they go out the door. And that's exciting. And that's still true in New York today, not just in Harlem, certainly particularly in Harlem, but it's still very true in New York today. Bold sort of self-expression, style, It's a community and a city that sort of welcomes and invites that. The Thomas Theater allows us to present Comedy of Errors in a slightly more intimate way that does not have to be just presentational. It's going to be in three-quarter thrust, which means the audience is, of course, surrounding the action, that the action is able to occur throughout the audience. That's really important in terms of, I want the audience members to feel that they're part of the community, so that the experience that the twins have, that Antipholus and Dromio, who come up from the South, their experience of arriving in Harlem should be our experience too. So we're seeing the community, we're seeing this world that seems to be so layered, that seems to have so much to it. It's a little bit like peeling back an onion or an artichoke, and you keep seeing more and more. And that's an easier thing to achieve when an audience is closer and is surrounding the action on multiple sides. So I think that's going to make the production really interactive in a lot of ways and exciting in a lot of ways. Because in New York, it feels like action is happening all around you. It's not a sort of singular straight line kind of experience. It's a kind of all over the map experience, and an experience literally from the floor, from the street. People come up out of the subways. Suddenly humanity's coming from underground. That's not occurring in the southeastern part of the country in the same way. The energy's going up. People are living on top of each other. What does that mean? So all of those things, I think, will add to the sort of comic delight and energy and jazz and excitement of the whole play.